Hello, everybody. Hopefully, it kicks everybody over to the live stream. There's going to be a 2-second stream happening. I forgot to change the power or the resolution again. All right. Hey, everybody, how are you doing tonight? My name is Laney Shaughnessy. Thank you for joining me live on Spindle TV. Sorry about getting the links out late to everyone. We'll see how class goes tonight, but I want to really break down to the basics. I want to create some 3D modeling, and I want to talk about the combined modes. Really kind of get into the combined modes a little bit. Add, subtract, merge low, multiply, and things like that. And I'm hoping by the end of the class tonight that even those that have never done any 3D modeling or anything like that, or never ventured into it, or haven't started it because they're nervous about it, whatever the reason, I'm hoping that by the end of the night, you'll have enough information to be dangerous and, kind of be able to dabble comfortably in the world of, kind of 3D. Whether it be VCarve Desktop, VCarve Pro, or Aspire, you can carve and lay out 3D designs in all three software. You don't have to have Aspire just to make models and all. And when you're laying out those scenes and things like that, how things combine, how you, tilt and fade, and, all of that stuff, it really plays a role. And I really want to kind of see if we can make a design or a few designs, talk about the combined modes, talk about, the thought process and things like that to a level to where it's informative to expert modelers out there, all you guys and girls that are watching that are great at this stuff. But also, like I said, someone that hasn't played around with putting models together in their VCarve Pro or Desktop or Aspire or anything like that, hopefully you'll have an understanding where it's like, oh, you know what? I could actually probably do this and, be able to, make something look good. And with that being said, give me 1 second to turn on another light because I don't have all of my studio lights tonight. And so my green screen is a little hazy and stuff like that, but it is what it is. I had to take one of my studio lights out to the shop and I forgot to bring it back in to be honest with you and all that. So you'll see my background glitch every once in a while, but other than that, everything else will be okay. All right, let's go ahead and share. Sharing is caring, ladies and gentlemen. And I do care. Let me share my entire window. Wonderful. And a big shout out to all my Spindle TV subscribers and exclusive members. Thank you all for coming and joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. It helps. If you like anything you see tonight or learn tonight or anything like that, hey, throw me a like, right? All right. We are going to just basically, I'm going to kind of just lay out a little work area to work with. So I'm going to just kind of start off with a 12 by 12 work area for myself. And we'll go with 1.5 inch thick material. Now I want a high resolution on this and stuff like that, but I don't need to, I'm not building a model that I might keep it or whatever, but I can always change the resolution as I go through if it's something that's amazing, right? But when we click OK here, I want to start off with excuse me. I want to start off with a kind of a 4-pointed star, and that looks like almost like a diamond, doesn't it? Doesn't even look like a star, does it? But it will. We just got to kind of bring this down a little bit. Bring this down some. And let's go even a little bit more or less than that. Let's go to 25. That looks 24, 23, 22, 21. I like 21. We're going to go with 21. All right. Now, let's get that centered. All right. And let's first talk about models and combined modes and things like that. I don't want to build a model yet. I just wanted to get that vector on the board because I do want to build a model. But let's talk about, for everybody that has, desktop and pro and things like that, let's talk about, the models that come with your software, right? Whether it was the folders of individual components of models, or it was one of the free models that you got to choose from Design and Make, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you're going to want to put things together or put scenes together and stuff, and how the models interact with each other, how they play with one another, merge low, multiply, add, subtract, and what's a level, and all that stuff we're going to learn, kind of break it down. So first things first, components, parts of a model are considered components, the things that make up a model. And when those components are put together and we have the finished model, that model is called a composite model. So your result of one or more components assembled together, however they merge to whatever, those individual components as a whole in their entirety make up a composite model. So your composite model is the result. That's the term. Composite model is the result. The parts that make up that model are components. Okay. And in your tabs on the left-hand side of the Vectric software, you have your component tree. This basic start off has one level, and all of the components that you add into here will fall under that level unless you add additional levels. Now, how components interact with each other, how they merge, how they add, subtract, and things like that, they can interact within a level a certain way, and more than one level, it's the level that reacts with the one that's below it. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. We're going to have one level here, and I'm going to grab two objects. Okay, let's start off with just a plaque. A plaque. I'll just pick a plaque. Excuse me. Let's get that plaque centered and sized down. And I actually wasn't meaning for that to happen, for it to look like the star, but that's okay. Cool. And then let's grab from our animals here. I'm going to grab two animals. So we'll grab a fish, and let's grab a duck. Okay. All right. And let's go to my components. I didn't even bring in the fish and the duck. Look at that. Let's do that again. A fish. There we go. And a duck or a swan or whatever it's supposed to be. Okay. All right. Now, I also want to bring in a dome. I'll bring in a 45-degree dome too. I'm throwing all these things on the pile right now. Okay. Now let's go to our components here, and you'll see we have multiple components, right? Well, for right now, I'm going to just work with the dome and the bass. just for a moment. And let me actually move this star just for this particular start of the lesson here. And when we look at the dome and we look at the bass and everything, they both have this yellow kind of upside down U, this filled in shaded kind of upside down U icon here. And what that means is they are currently merging with one another. So if I right click and I change the combine mode, there's add, subtract, merge, merge low, and multiply. Let's go into the 3D view and let's make this one an add. We'll make the bass an add on the combine mode. We'll even make the dome an add. We'll start off with add. And on the bass, let's kind of get it here. Now, when you add one model to another, think of like building a house, okay? Start with your foundation, your concrete foundation, and then you're working your way up, walls all the way up to the roof, okay? And how many thought I was going to say ceiling? You know, your walls all the way to the roof. And when you're building your model, you want to kind of do the same thing. You don't want the foundation on top of the roof, right? You don't want the roof under the foundation, that kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? We want to make sure that we always kind of organize our components in a way that it makes sense, and we're building from the bottom up. Now, when two components are added to one another, the one that's on top lays over the one that's underneath it. And it takes on the shape. Bear with me a second here. Can I make myself bigger? Yeah. It takes on the shape of whatever's underneath it. And so the analogy that I use often is, think of like a bed sheet. If you went out and you took a bed sheet out to your car and you draped it over the car, that bed sheet's not going to stay stiff and flat. It's going to take on the shape of the car underneath it, almost like a car cover now, right? It's going to take on the exact shape and everything. It's going to kind of just flow over it. Well, that's what add is. When you add one model component to another component, it takes on the shape and just kind of drapes over that. When you merge two components, they maintain their shape and they blend together. How well they blend together? Well, that depends on the components and, how we put them together and what they look like. Do they belong together or not, kind of thing, but they're gonna blend with one another and they're gonna merge with one another. If you are subtracting one component from another, then it's going to maintain that shape, but in a negative form. So right now I have the bass, fish, whatever, added to this dome. So literally when we look at it in the 3D view here in just a second, it's going to be draped over it, right? So if I go to our full view here and we go into the 3D, if I turn this on its side, that fish is draped over the dome, right? It's added to it. So it's like that sheet over the car. It doesn't maintain that fish doesn't maintain its shape. It just the details and stuff are there, but they're draped over the dome that's underneath it, right? And so we've added one component to another. Now, if I change the combine mode of that fish to a subtract, well, now it's going to, pretty much kind of maintain a shape, but it's gonna be a negative form of itself. So it's going to subtract the shape of that fish from the dome, right? You can see that in negative form, there's still a bit of a draping to it. You can still see the fish has still got that curve You know, it's still got kind of that curve to it. Not a big curve, you know, but it's there. But the fish has now kind of like went negative. It went minus, and it's taken away from whatever's underneath it, right? And so when we change the combine mode to a merge, well, now all you see is this green highlight. Now the green highlight is the software's way of saying, hey, there is a component that's inside of this other component, but the other component, the one on the bottom, is hiding it. It's hidden, you know, but it's showing you, this green is showing you where it is. Like there's something under the surface here. And what it is, if I turn off the dome, the fish has maintained its shape, its rigidity, its flatness, right? And since it's smaller than the dome, when that dome is on, the fish is just inside the dome. It's just in there, right? Now, if I gave the fish base height, like I raised the base, I added meat underneath it, you know, and raised it up. If I gave it base height, and if that base height exceeded the height of the dome, then the fish is going to maintain its rigidity, right? It's not going to drape over the dome, but it's going to, and we're looking at the shape here, right? The shape, because the base looks like it's draping, but it's not. The base is inside that dome. You can see the shadow here. It's down in that dome. It's a rigid. If we look at it from the front, if I turn that dome off, let's go to our components here. The base is there, right? So that fish is just jacked up, you know, it's jacked up on, you know, that base meat and everything. So when we add base to something, by the way, that's the meat underneath it. You have base height and you have shape height. On this bass, all the nice curves and contours and the gills and the fins and all that shape height, right? So the shape, the design, the detail. Anything underneath that, all this straight wood that you see underneath, that's base. And you can add as much base, you know, as you want. Because, you know, as they say, it's all about that base, right? All right, so when we put the dome on, that base, the dome is just merging. There, you know, it's not taking on any shape. None of that's merging. And of course, our bass is, now we have 1 inch of meat underneath that bass, so it's jacked up 1 inch, so it's sitting over that bottle. But you know, it's merged together. Well, now there is another combine mode that, you know, besides merge, called low. And low means that of the 2 or more components that are combining, it's going to find the lowest point of either one of the components, and it's going to only keep that. Okay, so if I take the bass and I combine that, or set it to a combined mode of merge low, then anything that is on the dome, because the dome was lower than the bass, you know, anything in the dome, only the dome is being kept. Anything that was outside of the dome, like the little tips of the bass's tail that was outside of the dome, well, that was the lowest point because there was nothing there on that outside, right? The fish was the only thing outside there. So it kept what was outside of that dome, you know, because that's the lowest point, so it's not going to go anywhere. But because the dome was the lowest point of the 2 objects, anything that was inside that dome, gone. In the dome, it kept the low, merged low. Okay? And so if I pulled that fish, let's say I pulled that fish and stretched it, right, to where the tail was just outside, then only the tail, you know, because the fish is set to combine to merge low, well, there's nothing there. There's nothing lower than the tail. Outside of that dome, there's nothing lower. The tail is it's the lowest, right? It's all by itself. So it's not going to shrink down. It's not going to disappear. It's not going to do anything there. But where the dome is, because the dome is the lowest component, or the lowest parts of the combined components, it's going to keep the dome, right? And I'm going to show you as we get into designing and stuff where this would apply, why or how we might use this scenario, this low, merge low. What would be a good purpose for that? Let's get the bass set back to an add. Now, let's switch this up a little bit, okay? And let's go back to the bass and take away that base height. Let's bring it back to 0, right? You'll see it kind of drapes over the, the dome again. We're going to set the shape. I want the detail of the fish. Let's just bring it up to a 0.625. Let's kind of give the shape a little bit more detail, right? And everything. And let's turn that off for a moment and let's focus on the dome for a second. Now, the dome, it's hard to see the dome and everything. It's hard to see the dome and all because we don't really have a zero plane. We don't have kind of that surface of wood and stuff that we have here. And so I'm going to throw in a zero plane, and I want to talk to you about that and show you kind of what I want to show you what a zero plane is and what we would use. A zero plane is the top of our surface. It's 0, right? The 0 point. So in our here, I want to go to create a model. Bear with me just a second. Bum, bum, bum. All right, give me a second. You see me pausing for just a moment. I am I've got a menu open somewhere. There it is. I had a menu open somewhere. Whenever it doesn't let you do something, when things are grayed out, you have another tool open somewhere or something's active that's deactivating the other stuff. And when my zero plane was grayed out, I had to piece together what was going on, and I had a tool open. I had to close the tool. All right, so I have a zero plane here, and I'm going to have the zero plane in dish. Let's look at what the zero plane is. Basically, the zero plane is a surface with a 0 height, mind you. Okay, so this, if let me see if I can deselect this. You see how the surface is here, how it's dark on the left and the right, the shading, if you will, of this maple. And you see how inside the dome, it's kind of a little bit of a hazy, lighter color, much lighter color. It's not because that is, it's not because that's a dish or anything. It's because the zero plane, think of it like a thin piece of film, right? A thin piece of material that has no height. And think of it where it actually goes right across the surface, okay? And that top of that board, that's 0. Okay, that is 0. And so my dish is below 0. And so everything inside that dish is kind of grayed out. It's like looking through a not necessarily a transparent film. It's one of like a frosted film almost, right? So we're kind of looking, we can see through, but it's kind of hazy, if you will. Now, If I threw the fish inside this dish, right? And let's get the fish to kind of somewhat fit. Let's get the fish to fit in the dish. And let's give the fish a little bit more height. I want the fish to kind of stand up a little bit more. So let's go to the properties of the fish and let's go 0.625. Okay. All right. Now, look very closely at this fish. Look very closely at this fish. And you can see that the dark part of the fish here, right around the eye and the mouth and the lower lip and everything, well, all of that is above the zero plane, right? So all of that is above the zero plane. So remember, like I said, the zero plane is like a frosted piece of glass or a frosted transparent film, right? With no height to it, it's zero height to it. So it's literally going right across that dish. And anything above the zero plane, we see kind of in its full glory, just like we see the wood out here, you know. And anything that's under that film, under that zero plane, it's kind of, you know, washed out, grayed out, right? And so we can tell that, and 0 is 0, the top of the board, that's the zero plane, right? It's 0, 0. So if I went into my tool here of set the Z height of you know, of a component, if I went in that tool, you would see that there's a maximum Z reading 0.1012. That means that there is, you can see the little eye and the lip right there. There is something above 0, above the zero plane. And because 0 is 0, 0 should be the maximum, right? 0 is 0. And but there's something on that maximum. See, there's something there. There's something over 0. And it's over 0 by 0.1012. If I made the bass a little bit bigger, let's say I go 0.75, and I go back into that, you know, set Z height. Now you can see that, you know, I have something over that zero plane, over the top of the board, you know, at 0.1768. So that's above 0. So a zero plane creates that surface, and what it does, it creates, you know, it creates the illusion of, it doesn't just create the illusion, but it creates the illusion of, you know, there's a surface there, right? And then anything below the surface, like a dish and all, we can see the, you know, how that dish blends, how it goes up and blends to the top of the surface. But also the zero plane, you know, lets us know that, hey, if I have a model, if I have this lip, if I tried to carve this model as it is right now, it would have to mill the entire surface of the board away, the entire surface of the board away, milling away 0.1768 to get to this level, right? To re-flatten everything out, because there's a model up here. The nose is sticking up here. You know, it's got to mill all that away to bring this level back to 0, and then it would go in and carve the dish and all that stuff, you know, out of the wood. But because our model is exceeding the top of the board, that plane, that flat plane where my mouse is right here, the software's got to mill out a way to create that plane. You know, that is not the top of the board. The top of your board is the top of this fish eye or fish lip or whatever that is, right? That's, you know, that's the top of the board. Well, since it's sticking up, it's got to come down and create this new plane right here. And this is 0. So anything above that is above it. So what, you know, what tends to happen is sometimes we want to put dishes and plaques and things. We want to create, you know, a dish, and we want to have, you know, a deer head or a fish or a set of grapevines or whatever inside this dish and make it look all cool and decorative and pretty and all that stuff. but sometimes they're bigger than the dish is deep, and we don't want to go too deep with the dish. This is a 45-degree dish, and right now my dish is, if I look at the properties of it, 0.8052 inches deep, right? To the depth of that dish. That's how deep it is. Now, remind you, my board is 1.5 inches and everything. But what if this was a 3/4 inch board? I can't have my dish going that deep. So let's pretend that my dish is only a 1/2 inch deep, 0.5. We're going to, whoop, too many decimals. 0.5. Oh, hold on. Come on now. 0.5. Let's try that again. Stay with me now. All right. So now my dish is shallowed up, right? It's only a 1/2 inch deep now, and my fish is bigger. My fish is, 0.75. So now more of my fish is up above, the zero plane. And that means that we have to, if we want that to carve, if we want this plaque right here to carve as it is, then the entire surface of that material has to get milled away except for around the fish, right? It's got to be able to create this little level here, all that dark area of the fish. It's got to be able to create that. So it's going to mill everything away just so that's up. And then it's going to start, once it recreates this new plane, this new level, then it's going to make the dish in that level, right? And sometimes we can't do that. I got clamps in the way, or I can't, my board has to be on the outside edges. It's got to be 3/4 of an inch thick or whatever, right? There's reasons why we wouldn't be able to mill away the entire surface. Maybe we just don't want to, right? So what do we have to do? We sacrifice sometimes. We sacrifice and go, man, I really like the detail in that fish, but I'm going to have to come in here and lower this. I'm going to have to make it smaller. Well, when I reduce the Z height of the fish, I'm also sacrificing some of its detail, right? So let's say I come in here and I know my dish is a 1/2 inch, so I got to be like within that. So let's go 0.48 on my fish, not 48 inches, but 0.48. Hold on a second. Oh, that's 48 inches. 0.48, there we go. And even at 0.48, remember now, 1/2 inch deep, that's the center of my dome. It's a dome, right? It gets shallower as it gets to the edge. So just because the center of my dome is a 1/2 inch deep, it gets shallower when it goes up to 0. These edges aren't a 1/2 inch deep, Aaron, but my fish is the whole size of the dome. It's the whole size of the dome, and I made the fish 0.48, but that's fine for the middle. Hey, its gut and everything is under the, it's under the zero plane, but this little fin is poking its head out. The eye and the face are still poking its head out. So now, man, what do I got to do? I have to make this thing a 1/4 inch tall to, to get it to fit in the dish. And let's go 0.25. That's 25 inches. Laney, come on now. 0.25. I got to learn to start typing in that leading zero. All right. 0.25. Now my fish has barely any scales or detail to it and all, but look at this. Look at this sucker right here. His little lip is still sticking out right there. That little red lip. So what do I got to do? Oh man, do I have to make my fish smaller to get it to fit in there and everything? Oh, there we go. So let's go smaller, and now it fits in that dish, right? No, why do that? Why now this thing is only a 1/4 inch tall in the middle, and it looks really deflated kind of in the middle of the dish, right? It looks really deflated and stuff. So what are my alternatives? What are the chances? What can I do to, get the best of both worlds? Well, that's where the combined mode of multiply comes in. Now, put on your thinking caps, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to take you back to school. All right? Add, subtract, multiply, divide. It's all arithmetic. It's all numbers. It's a numbers game. Well, when we multiply any number by 1, it's that number, right? 5 times 1 is 5. When we multiply any number by 0, it's 0. It's the only two things that you have to remember, 1 and 0, when it comes to the multiply mode. All right? Anything at 1 is going to be whatever height it's set at. Anything at 0 is going to kind of be 0, right? So what does that mean, Lenny? What I don't understand. Well, to use the combine mode properly, we have to kind of create an environment where 1 times 1 equals 1, and 1 times 0 equals 0. Well, how do we do that when it comes to the dome? What we do is we take our dome and our 0 plane and we duplicate them. Okay, we make 2 of them. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate. Just make another one. And my 0 plane, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate. And so I've got my dome 45-1 and my dome 45, the copy of it, right? And then I got my 0 plane 1 and my 0 plane, right? So I'm going to keep the originals together and I'm going to create the copies, have them together in my list. Now, I've just made a duplicate of the same thing of this dome, right? Well, now I have to create the environment of 1 times 1 equals 1 and 1 times 0 equals 0. So on my copy of my dome, I'm going to reverse it. So on the combine mode, instead of a dome, which is a subtract, I'm going to make it instead of a dish, my dish, instead of a dish, I'm going to make it a dome, right? And on that dome, I'm going to go into the properties and I'm going to change the size of the dome to 1. Don't think of it in terms of inches at this point, or 1 inch, half inch, 1. So I'm going to set the size to 1, the shape height to 1. Okay. Right. Now, on that dome, its height is set at 1. I'm going to take that dome and my 0 plane. I'm going to group them together, combine them together, those two. So they're a pair. Now they're a pair. And I'm going to change the group, keeping the dome as the opposite of my dish, right? Keeping the dome intact. But inside the group, I can change the combine mode of the entire group, and I can change it to multiply. Now, you're going to see, and what I want to do before I change it to multiply, let me make sure my bass is up at the top. I'm going to put my dome at the top and my 0 plane at the top. I don't want you to see the effect just yet, right? When I come in here on my group, and I'm going to change the combine mode to multiply, what we should see on the screen is it should flatten out, right? So I'm going to hit multiply. Give it a second, and it flattened out to 0, but what you're seeing now, everything above is we're getting kind of the effect. But let me turn them off really quickly. Turn those 3 things off because I want you just to see the group. And I want you to see that the group is nothing, right? That dome, it's there. It's 1 inch tall. It's 1. Don't think I just said don't think of it as inches and all that, but it's 1. It has a value of 1, but it's there and it's hidden, right? Now, anything that we put under that is going to be multiplied by 1. 1 being the deepest part, and the 0 plane, it's still 0, right? 1 and 0. So when I turn on my original dish and my original 0 plane, okay, there, everything is normal. Nothing's happening. No effect or anything yet. My bass, currently my bass right now is only a 1/4 inch tall. I want my bass to be big again, right? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to make it full size again. I'm going to go 0.75. And notice that, again, I'm right above that zero plane, just like, the problem that we had, right? That's because nothing's happened yet. I'm above my little multiply factor. And what I want to do is, the important thing is my bass has to be in the middle. It has to be the same height as my dish is deep. So if I want my bass to be 0.75, I need my dish to be 0.75. I need it to be the same height. Those two numbers have to match one another. So I'm going to just, for simplicity, I'm going to make it 0.5 on the bass, and I still should have part of the nose and stuff should still be up above the zero plane, so we can still see the effect and everything. And so we can still see, let's come in here and zoom in, those darker areas, right? Those areas above the zero plane. Well, look at our height here. I'm 0.113 maximum Z, 0.1135. That's how much of that fish is sticking up against over the zero plane. Well, now, if I take in my component tree, if I take the bass and move it below that multiplied group, anything below the multiplied group in the list is going to take on that multiplier, right? So I'm going to bring the bass down below the group, and you should see it go under the zero plane. Once again, watch the green area there. Let's go up above the group. You see I'm above the zero plane here, right? When I bring the bass below the group in the list, I'm here. Now, what's happening? What's going on, Laney? What's the dealio there, dude? Well, I want you to notice something. Let me get kind of in a front view here. All right. What's happening is, think of this from the center line of this dish all the way out to the edge, okay? Think of this as 1 in the center, working its way to the edge, 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, right? My fish, the thickness of my fish, that height is getting multiplied by 1. It's getting multiplied by 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and it's getting multiplied by 0 at the end. And what's happening is in the center of the dish, the fish is maintaining its thickness, but it's slowly reducing to nothing by the time it reaches the edge. And so we're not quite at 0 here, but still the height of my fish times whatever that number is, whatever that little invisible number is here, 0.2, that's how high it made the fish right here. So, if the fish would extend past 0, what do you think would happen? If I made this fish go bigger than my dish, what's going to happen to anything that's at the 0 mark? The 0 mark is the edge of the dish, right? So if I made my fish bigger, what happens to the fish? It disappears, right? Because 1 times 0 is 0. It's my fish's height, 1 being the thickness of my fish, whatever it is, times 0 equals 0. There's nothing there, right? So what it does is it fades that down and everything, and it brings it to 0. Now, why, when I stretched it, why am I back over my height here? Remember, your fish has to be the same depth as the dish, and when you scale a model, it not only scales X and Y, but it also scales Z. So when I stretched the fish, I made it thicker than a half inch and all that, but still, the effect is the 0, I'm still, it goes to nothing, right? Let's bring the fish back in, all right? Okay, and so that fish now is below 0, and a way to verify that there's nothing above the 0 plane now is if I go into my change Z height of a model or component, if I click here, hold on, I still got something Let me look at my fish, because my fish is, that means my fish is not 0.5 inches. Hold on a minute. I got to go look at my fish. Where's my fish? Go to the properties. See that 0.025 right there? That's where that number comes from. If my fish is the same height as my dish is deep, then when I go look at the property here, there should be 0 should be the maximum Z. There shouldn't be anything over 0. It's below it, right? Because 1 times 1 is 1, right? The thickness of my fish, a 1/2 inch thick, it's a 1/2 inch thick. My fish is right there at a 1/2 inch thick, in the middle. But then it gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower until it gets to 0. It's being multiplied by that 1 in the middle, but then it's getting multiplied by 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, whatever, the decimal all the way to 0. The edge is 0. So nothing's going to show outside that edge. Now, the cool thing about that is let's say that I wanted to, let's bring in the goose. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So let's go to components here. Let's turn off the fish. Let's turn on the Canadian goose. But before I turn on the Canadian goose, I'm going to move it above the 0, the multiplier, just so we can, I want to see that effect when we bring it down below there. Let's turn on the goose here. All right. On the goose, right? The goose is set to a combined mode of add, meaning it's taking on that shape. That's that sheet draping over. Let's get the goose in the middle of the dish. Hold on a second. And I want it to, size out there. Look at there. My wings are outside of that dish. You see that? My wing here and my wing there are outside of that dish. So it's going to get clipped, right? Right now, it's not going to get clipped if we look at it in the 3D view, because I'm not under the multiplier yet, right? So now I have this wing outside of the dish, and even if I did cut the wing off, like if I trimmed it off in clipping or whatever, I still have this part of the wing that's above the 0 plane, which means I would have to try to shrink it down and this and that. Well, I don't care about this end of the wing. I just want the goose, the main body of the goose and everything. When I'm looking at this on a top view here, I like that look of that dish. I don't care, what's outside the dish. It's what in the dish is what I want. And if I said, okay, well, let me just do it this way. Let me just at least get the main part of the wing there, right? And everything. That little tip, I'm okay with losing, in this wing here. All right. I could size it down. I could shrink it. I could make it fit, but I don't want to. I want it this size. I want it to look like this in the dish. What do? Well, I have to do the multiply. So if I bring this down below that multiplier in the component tree, what's going to happen is it's going to remove anything outside of the dish, because it's 0. 1 times 0 is 0. There's nothing there, right? 0, 0. There's nothing. So it's going to trim off anything that's outside of my dish. The middle of the goose is going to maintain its thickness, whatever it was, but then it's going to start kind of fading as it gets to that edge. So what's happening is, you can see as it gets to the edge, because remember that dish is going up, right? So as that gets higher, closer to that edge, it starts fading into nothing. So now when we look at this from a top view, let's get that back up there. Now when we look at this as a top view, I have this full figured model that is nice and laid out nice in this dish, and it is faded away. So this is one main way to use the multiply. Now, how did we achieve this, Lainey? What was that step again? We have a dish and we have a dome. Opposite, right? A dome. Now, the dome is set to a value of 1, a height of 1. That's going to be our multiplier, right? And that dome in the 0 plane get grouped together, and that group gets turned to a multiplier. Now, that's my multiplier. Now, anything in my component tree that's below the multiplier is going to take on the effect of that. It's going to be multiplied by 1 because I'm set to multiply. So anything below it in the list is going to be multiplied by 1. And it's going to, it's going to set that. Anything above is just, it's going to keep its normalcy, right? So if my dish and my zero plane are above my, grouped multiplier, they're still a ½ inch deep. They're still 0. They're still this. They're still that. Anything below the multiplier gets multiplied. Anything above doesn't, right? So that's not good for me this way because, I'm going to have to mill this whole board down just to get that wing on. Plus the wing is, laying over the edge looking all funky and stuff like that. I don't want that at all. It kind of looks, like it's broken and everything. So what do? I have to, put it below the multiplier. It takes away that and it keeps my detail as much as possible, but then it does have to fade to 0, right? Because it's getting multiplied by 0. So. Now, everything that's going from the center out, because this dish is going, it's a dish all the way around. There's nothing, it's a dish. So everything from the center part, the tail feathers, the neck and the head, the wings and everything in the middle of this dish at my deepest part, that's all getting multiplied by 1, and so it maintains its thickness. If my duck is a ½ inch thick, it maintains that ½ inch thick in the middle. But again, as it gets to the edge, don't matter what direction it's going, it's get from 1 everywhere on the edge going out is a different multiple. It's 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, all the way to 0, right? You got to think of it like that way, And so my ½ inch duck or goose, what have you, Canadian goose, my ½ inch goose is getting multiplied by 1 in the middle, but maybe an inch over, it's getting multiplied by 0.8 or whatever the factor is. And so the height is getting reduced by that, and it's continually getting reduced until it gets to the edge. And beyond the edge, that's 0. There's nothing. Nothing shows beyond the edge. So that's one way of using a multiplier or the multiply. And it's very rarely when it comes to the combine mode of components and everything, it's very rarely a used combine mode. Normally we are adding or subtracting or merging, things like that. But the merge low and the multiply, we hardly ever use for one reason or another, but this, domes and dishes or dishes, when we have those dishes in our plaques and we want to, have something in a dish like a soccer ball or a basketball in a net or whatever, and we want it to kind of stand up, but it can't stand up too high, and all that stuff. We can use that multiply to get it to just look really nicely and, kind of trim everything to the dish. Now, is this the only scenario where we could use the multiplier? Is this the only thing that, the multiply could be used for and everything? And no, it doesn't always have to be, it doesn't always have to be a dome or a dish. It could be any shape, really, but they have to be opposite of one another. So one shape, whatever I create, I have to create a copy of it and a reversal of it, if you will, right? So the mirror image, is that the right term, a mirror image? It's the negative of it, the negative, or however you want to say. And that copy, we can combine, we can, make that multiply, and it turns into that 1 factor. It's got to have the height of 1. 1 is the magic number. You got to put the 1 in there. But it doesn't have to just be a dome or a dish. Now, we're gonna draw something, or we're gonna make something, and we're gonna use some of the combine modes, okay? And we're gonna kind of, the scenarios, we're gonna put them together, adding, subtracting, merging, and all. And then I'm gonna show you like where a merge low might come in handy, and where a multiply might come in handy outside of the dome and dish. Now, when it comes to the dome and dish, I mean, it's the same setup, same situation. You have your dish in a zero plane. You have a copy of your dish turned into a dome opposite and set to 1, and a copy of your zero plane. Those two copies get grouped together, and that group gets set to multiply. Same scenario. Don't care what you're working on when it comes to a dish and whatever's in the dish. That's the same setup. That's how you set up your component tree. Okay. And then when it comes to the list, anything below your group, your multiply. And by the way, on the group, I like to change the name on the group to my multiply. You could say multiplier or multiplier or multiply, whatever you want to call it. But that group, and I like to minimize my group, right? I don't need to see what's in the group. My multiplier is there, so it gets minimized, right? And inside is that dome set to 1 and the zero plane. But that I like the multiplier. That way, when I'm moving things around, anything below the multiplier gets multiplied, right? The math kicks in for whatever's below it. Anything in the list above it, the multiplier has no effect on it. Okay? And that's your setup. If you ever needed to do this situation, or if you ever ran into this situation, you have your dish, and let me call this dish since it is not a dome, it's actually a dish. Let me rename it so it doesn't confuse you when you're looking at it. This is a dish, my main dish, right? You got your zero plane, those two things, they're together at the top. You got your multiplier, which is the copies of those, right? We've already discussed that numerous times. And then anything below that multiplier gets that effect. It gets that multiplied effect, right? So where in the middle, that's 1, that's your highest thickness, whatever, and everything. And then everything as it works its way out, 0, 0 out at the edges. Okay? Okay. All right. I don't think I need to beat that dead horse anymore. So let me see here. I can see by the wing that it does. Let me see here. Does the fish head lose detail as it goes to 0? Yes. Yes. Yep. So everything, it's the detail starts to fade because it's getting multiplied and it's getting reduced down. And anytime you reduce the Z height of a model, you're reducing the detail as well too. So in the middle, that's why it's really important to be able to maintain as much detail as possible. But you gotta that dish gets shallower as we get closer to the edge. So it's got there's gonna be some sacrifice of detail, but it's not hopefully gonna be too much to where it takes the effect away. So when I'm looking at this and everything here, we have a let me see here. Light follows user. Now let's turn light follow user off. There we go. But so when we're looking at it from the front, we've got that nice detail in the middle. And yes, it does start to fade, but that's because we're getting shallower and shallower as we go. Now, if you want more detail in there, you can change the thickness of how deep your dish is. Let's say, let's say I am, my dish is a 1/2 inch and I do have 3/4, and I can go 5/8 because I want to. Then I could change that to 0.625 on my dish. I just have to remember on my goose to also, get it, oops. It doesn't, you don't have to be the exact, as long as it's less, I can't be any more than 0.625, right? And everything. So now, you can see the detail and everything. So the detail's still very decent, out here and everything and all and everything on the feet and the tail and stuff, even though it's fading away, right? But still got good detail and things in there. Cool beans, right? Cool. The multiply. All right. Now let's go back. Let's turn off these models here and multiply and all that stuff. Turn all that off, and let's go back to the star for a moment. We are going to, let's get this centered on the board. I am going to make a model, right? And I'm going to, let's get a circle. All right. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of the star. So I can right click on the screen and I can do copy paste. I can go up to edit, copy paste. I can do Control C, Control V, whatever tickles your fancy in getting it done. Just make it happen, right? So I need to make a copy and I need to make a paste. All right. Now, as soon as I pasted that vector is the selected vector. It's on top, right? Pasted it right on top and it's selected automatically. So I can start doing what I want to do with it. What I want to do with it is I want to rotate it 45 degrees. So I'm going to hit the number 9 once. Okay. Now what I want to do with it is I want to hold down my shift key and I want to size it down and I want to scale it down right about there. Okie dokie. Cool. All right. Now I am going to go into the 3D view and we're going to make a model. So first thing I'm going to make is I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to make a flat model shape, 1/4 inch thick, 0.25. And I'm going to just call this my base. Okay. Cool beans. So I'm going to make another level because I got level 1 has that Canadian goose and all that stuff on there and everything. I'm just going to insert a new level and I'm going to move the base up to that level. So think of level 2 is kind of like another playing field, right? For me to work with. Now, if I turned on the models in level 1, whatever's in level 2, whatever it is, however that level is, it's going to combine with level 1 based on the levels combine mode. So I can actually change the combine mode on the level instead of the component, the individual items, right? Okay. All right. So now I want to take my big 4-point star here and I want to go into, and I'm going to create a angular shape. And on the angular shape, very important, I'm going to check off to preserve my internal corners because I got internal corners right there. I got 4 of them and everything. And on the profile, I'm going to go to 45-degree angle, 45. 100%, no limitation or anything like that. I'm just going to let it rock out to 100% of its height and everything, and no base height on this. I'll look at the base height in just a moment and all that stuff. But this is going to be my large star. Okay. Now, what did the preserve internal corners actually do for us, Laney? What does that actually do? Well, when it's creating this angular shape, if I don't preserve the internal corners, which kind of creates that nice sharp crease and everything, if I don't preserve those, then it's going to round them somewhat as it's trying to create this angular shape, and it's kind of moving around the corner to this angular shape. It's kind of rounding that middle part. It's kind of like it's going, from here to here, there to there, and it's kind of rounding. Well, if I say preserve the internal corners, then it's like folding up an airplane, paper airplane. I'm keeping those creases tight, right? So it's maintaining those creases. Okay, preserving the internal corners. All right, now I'm going to take my smaller star and I'm going to do the same thing, But this time I'm going to go just a 30-degree angle. And if I leave it in add mode right now on my smaller star, it's going to pop this star up and everything. Let me say small star. If I leave it in add mode, my small star is literally just draping over the large star. I mean, it's just like, it's just laying over it, you know, right? It's not maintaining any kind of, you know, height or anything that's over that star. The only time it keeps its rigidity is out here, you know, but other than that, it's just taken on the shape. It's that sheet that I just draped over the car, right? So we don't want that for sure. Now, if I subtract it, well, it's still kind of taken on the shape of that 45-degree shape, but now it's kind of turned it into a negative, you know, from there and everything. I don't want that. So if I merge, okay, if I merge the shape, well, if I set it to merge, it's not only merging with the star, but you also have to remember there's a 1/4 inch base as well. So my height right now of this little star is only 0.27 inches. Well, my base alone is a 1/4 of an inch. Then I have the 3/4 inch star at the toppest peak, you know, on top of that. Well, 0.27, I'm not, that little star is not getting seen. But the software says, hey, that little green shadow is telling you, hey, there's something in there, right? It's just getting hidden. So I need to give it some base height. I need to at least give it a 1/4 of an inch base height, right? So if I go a 1/4 of an inch on the base height, I at least get it up past the base and everything. And, you know, but still the part of my star is, you know, still hidden. And that's kind of good. That's what I want. You know, you can kind of see what I'm creating, this compass rose, if you will. And so I'm at least above the base. So now I can see the points here. I can go up, you know, I can give it, you know, some additional height and things. I can, let's go on the base. I can go 0.375, too many decimal points, 375. That's going to bring it up even higher. But I'm still, even though I bring it up higher, that 0.75, I'm still not, the center of the star is still not going to reach 0.75. My big star is 3/4 of an inch, right? So I'm not going to get up any, you know, higher than that. And I'm going to stay just like, you know, just like 21. I'm going to stay at 15, right? So I'm going to stay at a base height of 0.375. Okay, so now I have that shape. Now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a small rectangle. Like that. And I'm going to going to the chapel and all right, I'm going to turn this into a Bezier curve. I'm going to pull this down to here and pull this down to here, and I want to kind of get it to follow this. I know. Hold on one second, ladies and gentlemen. I got someone telling me something. You go right there and just relax. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Had Laney, my dog. My dog is named after me. I didn't name my dog. Let's see here. I want to just kind of somewhat, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to take on that shape. Now, you know what? I'm going to do this even different. I'm going to come all the way out here. Just like that. Now, on this shape here, I want this shape. I want this shape to come up on the sides little bit of a chamfer, flat on the top, right? So let me turn this back to a line real quick. And let me, now watch this, node editing. When you want to align, so I want to straighten this line back out. This is my reference. Any one of them, one of the two could be your reference, but I want to click my reference first. That's what I'm aligning to. Hold down the shift key, select the node that I want to move or align with my reference node. And then up and down is the y-axis, left to right is the x. If I hit the letter y, it'll pull that node into alignment with my reference node, right? So cool beats. All right, so here on this shape and all, I'm going to create an angular shape. The angular shape, I'm going to go with a 30-degree chamfer, if you will, but I'm going to cut it off at a certain percentage. And this, in my case, I'm going to go 25%. So as it starts to create this pyramid, 25% of the height, let's say the height is 1 inch, at 0.25 of that inch, 25%, going to flatten it off. All right, so if we were to look at that, come up here and really get up close and personal. I don't have any height on it yet, and I got to fix my resolution on my model. I'll make it bigger in just a second, but let's give it some base height. Okay. Not that much base height. That's way too much. Let's go. And it's too much base height. Let's go 0.0625. Too many decimal points. 0.0625. I'm not going to cut it off at 20. 25% was too low. I want a little bit more of a chamfer. So let's go 45%. Let's see. We'll get it straightened out here to where it looks decent in just a second. We'll increase the clarity of this model in just a second. Now, I'm going to set this to add. Now, here's the kicker on this one, okay? This shape is outside of my circle, my base, outside of my model. But it is not outside of my wood. So it is, even though I'm setting as an add, the end here literally is going to drape over this base. So when we look at it in the 3D view, and again, I'll clear it up in just a second, but let me spin this around and everything. I want you to see that literally that's part of the model right there. There's no base height. It's all sitting right up here on top of this base, right? But because that little bit extends past the circular base, it's draping again. It's draping. It's set to add. It's draping over that, right? So I'm going to end up cutting that off. I'm going to end up deleting that part of the model in a little bit. But if I, let's say I wanted it to be on the outside, but I need it to be not down here. It's literally down here. That height right there, where my mouse is, that's this height right here. So it's literally dropped down, and it's only that high down here. If I needed it to be the full height all the way up, I would have to set the combine mode to merge. And I would have to give the base height that 1/4 inch of base. Hit apply to bring that up, right? To bring that up and everything. Now, that's just 1/4 inch of base. I need it a little bit more. So if I said 3/8 base, 0.375, now I'm that 1/8 of an inch up above my, the 1/4 inch got me to the surface. Now I'm, the 1/8 of an inch high, and I don't want the full 1/8 and everything. So let's go 0.3125. Call that a day. All right. Now, before I do anything with this component that I want to do, once again, that the chamfer, it's not really that big right now. You know, it's kind of still low. So I'm going to go like a little bit extreme, not much, 75%. I'm going to let it kind of go 75% of that peak, that 30-degree angle. And I'm also going to give the angle, 30 is kind of flat. I want some peak. So let's at least go, let's go 45 degrees. 45 degrees, let's give it some peak. Again, I know it's blurry. It'll clear up in just a second when I change the resolution on the project. And so let's give it that 45 degrees and everything. Now, so we can see this much clearer, let me zoom out. Okay, and let me go back into my job setup. Hold the shift key down. And let's change this resolution. I'm just going to jack it up twice of what it is so it's a little less pixelated. It's not going to be totally perfect. But at least at this point, we can kind of see that better. It's not so pixelated. Now, if I decided I wanted to jack it up a little bit more, then I could, you know, we can see that detail a bit better. But so this is kind of pyramiding up that 45-degree angle, and then it's flattening out at that 75%. Now that I got it at 45 degrees, 75 is a little bit too high for my liking and all that wonderful jazz and everything. Now the question is when I'm in a component and everything and all, can you go back and edit a component? Can you go back and work with it and model and everything? And for the most part, the answer is yes on that. So here I can come back in and change my angle. No, not change my angle. Change my percentage. I want to trim it just a little bit. So I'm gonna land at 65 here. Click apply. It's going to bring it down and flatten it out. It'll widen it up a little bit there. Good. All right, cool. Now I'm going to give this a little bit of a draft. So it's not so straight up and down. So I'm going to come into my component tree and I'm going to turn off everything. By the way, a fast way of doing that is right-clicking on the component and saying show only this, right? So it turns off everything and it only shows that component. Now, this is the component with that 1/4 inch base plus that extra, you know, height, so that 0.3125, right? So that's the whole thing. You're just seeing it all by itself, all by its lonesome right now. Nothing else is showing. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to add a draft, which is an angle. I'm going to add a draft to this model, and I don't want to add a draft to anything else. Okay. So I'm going to add a 22.5-degree draft to this. And what that's going to do is for sides. If you have any questions, the draft, right? So now it looks like a big old cone, right? So all I did is just drafted that out. Now, that draft gives me a little bit of substance at the base of this, because when I turn my base back on, whoop, remember, 1/4 inch of it's hidden inside that base, right? And then I turn my large star on and my small star and everything. Now I have this piece that's got that nice little bit of an angle to it. You know, it's 22.5 degrees, then it goes 45 degrees here at the peak, then it flattens out. Now, I am going to remove this right here. So how do we do that? I'm going to select this component model of the draft here, and I'm going to come in and select this circle, And I'm going to say in my tools, clear everything outside of that circle away. Okay. So it just cuts it off. Okay. And I'm not worried about the sharp edge and all that stuff and blah, blah, blah. Because when I do my smoothing on my edges, it will, it'll clean up. But I'm going to take one step back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to undo that just really quickly because I want a draft on my base. I forgot to put the draft on my base. So I stepped it back, turned everything off except for the base. I want a draft on this. I don't want the walls up here. So I want to go to my draft, same 22.5 degrees, kind of my go-to for most of the things. Okay, very subtle little angle there, right? Now, if I wanted to go more extreme, just so you can understand what's what. By the way, really quickly, before I do anything further, let me hit save to save this, because if I lose it or I freeze up or I whatever, I don't want to have to start over. All right, really quickly, just for some extreme purposes and all, let's go 45 degrees on the draft. Now, watch, it'll go away. It'll go back to the straight wall, and then it'll put the 45-degree angle on there. Okay, so here we go. Apply. All right, there's that. Here we go. There's that draft, right? Okay. So we blinked out for a moment when it was doing that draft. Let's go ahead and hit close. Let's go into our job setup. I'm just going to turn that resolution down. It doesn't need to be that high, for this purpose, for this lesson and all, and everything. And I want to go in and hit save. Let that save. All right, so we now have a 45-degree draft on there, right? I went extreme just so you could see it. Yes, I know, Edwin, it froze when it was calculating. That's why I turned the resolution down. It was the stream froze and everything on that because it was processing some power. But you didn't miss anything. All it did was take the 22.5-degree draft away, and it put the 45-degree draft in its place that I put there. And that's all it did, is create that 45-degree slant right there, that draft. Now, where does the term, just for kicks and giggles, where did the term draft come from and stuff? Normally, you will see draft in things where there's forms, like let's say injection molding, right? So plastic injection molding for all the little parts that are, that you see around the world and everything. the molds have a slight draft to them, slight angle to them, so that the part releases easier, right? And so when we add a draft to something, it's that slight angle, so the part, kicks out of the mold easier and everything, versus a straight wall where things can get jammed up and friction and all that stuff. It kind of that's where you see a draft. Or in concrete, when you're doing concrete forms and everything, you might have a slight draft, like on your staircase, forms and things, a slight draft, angle, so it releases from the molds. Or the forms and everything, but that's the purpose of the draft. Now, once again, on here, when I turn all the components back on, my star, notice it looks like it shrank. Looks like the star shrank, right? And in a sense, it did, right? The large star, everything is merging together, right? And this is my base right here. So the base foundation, right now the foundation is on top of everything. So I just put the foundation on the roof. We're going to move that down to here, the base. See that? See how that works? All right, now the roof is back on top of the foundation. So it's important, that hierarchy, it's important, because things like that happen. Once again, just so for those of you that are just now catching on and all that stuff, if I put the foundation over the roof, then, part of that roof is covered by the foundation, right? So always build from the bottom up. All right. So now with this draft, right, with that flare out of the base, really the part that was once kind of outside the edge, it's not as bad. Let me come here on the edge and everything. It's not that bad. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just, instead of deleting it and cutting it off and all that stuff, I'm going to take that part and I'm going to bring it in just a little bit, not much, because I am going to still trim off some of it. But I'm going to, come on now. Let me look at the 3D view. I'm going to be happy with that. That's fine. I'll leave it right like that. All right. Now, what am I doing with that thing? What is that thing? What is that thing? All right. I'm going to take that component and I am going to make a circular array of that component around the center of my model, right? So the center of my model, my part is 12 by 12, so it's 6 by 6 here, X and Y. So the rotation center is going to be 6 and 6. Now, I could have also achieved that by clicking on the little round dot right in the middle, and it would have made it that 6 by 6. Okay, one of the two. Now, I could bring this around 360 degrees. Okay, 360 times all the way around, like, a degree. If I were going to do that on a small part like this, I'd make that part just a little bit smaller so they're not all jammed up on top of each other and all that stuff. But I'm going to I'm going to use half. So before I do, I want, before I copy that around quite a bit, I want to go in my component tree and I want to create a new level. All these little things that I'm about to create are going to be on their own level, isolated on their own level. And this level here, I'm going to take the part and drag it up in there. Okay. And I'm going to take that selected part, I'm going to array it around that 6x6 area. And I'm just going to go, I could go 180 degrees, 180 of them. I could go 60, I go 30, I go whatever, whatever makes sense and all that stuff. I'm just going to do every 30 degrees. And right. So each one of those little notches will represent 30 degrees. Now, I have just made 30 of them. Okay. And they are all very, very tall. And the reason why they're all very, very tall is because the level, this is important to know this. Why did they change? Why are they like these big peaks now and everything? Because even though they are still set to merge, right? They were merging with the base. That's when they were in the same level as the base. They're in their own level, and that level is not merging with the level below it. It is adding to it, right? That's the combine mode, is add. So they literally are sitting on top of this. They're no longer like they were. Well, I need this level to merge with the level that the base is in. So I'm going to change the levels combine mode from add to merge, and it'll put all those parts back where they belong. Right? So I isolated these into their own level. And even though every single one of those, you can see the little icons, that little shaded in upside down U, that's the merge, icon. Even though they're all merging, they're merging with each other on that level. But how that level combines with the level that's underneath it, that level was set to add, so it was adding to everything that was in the other levels below. So I needed that level to merge. That level to merge, to bring them back. Now they're all merged with them in there. All right. Cool. Now, I have this, I put this on its own level just so I could probably rename this, right? Give it some, let's give it some class here. So this will be our degrees. And then I'll just go 60, right, kind of thing. And I'm going to just minimize that, right? So that's all of our marks and stuff. So now, pretty slick, we got this kind of compass thing happening here and everything. And all. We could throw in, the letters north, west, east, and south. We could throw in, some letters in there. We could do whatever we want with it. But the one thing I want to do, is I want to put another little circle right here in the middle. And I just want the peak. I just want the kind of the peak of this center area to kind of show through that circle. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to take my circle tool. I'm going to kind of just come right, just a little bitty circle here. I'm going to, it's important now. You see what level I have highlighted here? What level is highlighted? Whatever I make is going to go in that level unless I select another level, right? Make it active, just like layers. active. So I want to make this active again. I want to kind of put back in here. So I'm going to come in here and I want to make a shape. Just a flat shape. Now, remember, my base was 1/4 of an inch. The big compass at the top of the peak, I believe, was 3/4. So that's like 1 inch overall height kind of thing. I don't want to go that high. I'm going to just go 0.75. And I want to merge this in. Call this my center circle. Click apply. And in the 3D view, I want to go a little higher because I don't want the points touching like that. You see that right there? So I want to go a little bit higher. So let's go 0.875. Click apply. Oh, that was too high. So what's a good 0.75? Let's go 0.77. Oh, still touching. I just want to break the connection. Wow, you son of a gun, 0.8. There we go. Just want to break the connection right there. And I'm going to break it even more when I add a draft to that. Let's go 0.82. Just 0.82. Okay. Now, just breaking that connection, just coming up over that surface and everything. Now, hold on, not done yet. Now I want to add a draft to this. Now, when I add a draft, it's going to angle out. So, you know, I might want to make my bigger star a little bit bigger. Great thing about it, I can size things as I want. But let's do the draft first. So I'm going to go in here, and once again, that center circle, I could right click and say show only this. So it hides everything else, and it's only showing that. And I'm going to add a draft to it, but I'm going to go back to my 22.5 degree draft. Click apply. Should just cone out. Yes, Edwin, thank you very much. Yeah, I put in 60, meaning the count instead of the degrees, and I named it 60 degrees. I appreciate the correction on that. Thank you. All right, so just a little bit of a draft there. Let's go in and turn that up. So Edwin was just, correcting me. That's exactly right. He's 100% correct. I called this degrees, and I put 60. What in my mind, Edwin, I was thinking, you know, it's my degree marks, and there's 60 of them. That's why it's in parentheses. Not necessarily saying it was 60 degrees, but you're 100% right. There are, I believe I did 60, right? Did I do 60 or do 30? Let me look at the circular array. I did 30. So didn't even have that right, Edwin. I did 30. So that number would be 30. And you're 100% right. Just like hands on a clock. 12 hands, 360 degrees around. It's 30 degrees. Each one of those hand angles is a 30-degree angle. Cool stuff. All right. Let's come back in here and turn on our degree marks. Turn on our base level stuff. Not that stuff. So not that. Okay. Now on my little star. I do want my little star to stick out a little bit more. This is the wrap up of this. All right. As I scale it, it's going to increase the height as well. So all I want to do is just make this slightly bigger, and it scales X, Y, and Z as I'm scaling it. I want to make it slightly bigger just so it's a little bit more pronounced here, right? a bit more pronounced here. Now, you see the on the star here, the straight meat, right? I call that the meat. That's that straight, that's that base height, right? That base height we had to give it to get it up there and everything, and all that wonderful jazz. I want to kind of like, I want to add a bit of a draft to this. So once again, I'm going to take that component, and this is going to be that we'll wrap it up on this one, or not, on this particular project, we'll wrap that up. But I want to go on that small star. I want to show only this. I want to, you see that small star? Notice how it's rounded right here. Rounded. Did not preserve the internal corners when I made that star. And bear with me just a second. Bom, bom, bom. Bom, bom, bom. Give me just a moment. Oh. There's a keyboard shortcut, and I thought it was Control E. I thought it was Control E. Shift E. Come on, Vetric. I know there's a. There we go. Didn't have to hit or hold control or do nothing. See this preserve internal corners? That should have been checked. Right? Give it that nice sharp edge, that crease. All right. So I didn't have to hold control or nothing. I was just double clicking and opened right back up. Good. Now, once again, show only this. I want to add the draft. Now, the angle of that was a 30-degree angle on this. So I'm actually going to match that angle. So that way it should, if I'm right, 30-degree, I may have to double it up to go, oh, it's not going to let me go. I can't go 60. 45 is the maximum I could go. I wonder if it'll let me go 60. Will it let me go? No. It cuts me off. 45. Dadgummit. Why did I stop it? Because look what else is all active and everything. Can't have that because it would try to create a draft on everything, right? Everything. So I need it to show, once again, only this. I need nothing else visible. It almost, if I wouldn't have caught that, I was looking at it, I was like, what's that other stuff? All right, let's do that one more time. Let's turn everything back on. Oh, hold on. All right. Now, the 45-degree draft looks ugly as all, be it because of the round edges right there. So I'm actually going to turn that off and leave my small star, turn that on, leave that as it is for right now. I'll go in and adjust that later, but I want to move on. I don't want to get stuck on this or anything like that. Let's turn off the vectors and let's let me evaluate really quickly this compass rose. Let's see that circle. Let's turn that off. Kind of thinking without the circle there. Yeah, we'll leave that off. All right, so we have, in this one, we have our base, our foundation. We have the big star adding on top of the foundation because it's flat, so it can add right to the top of it. The smaller star is merging, and it's merging with both the base and the big star. So there is some base height added to it to raise it up. That's why there's that straight meat right there. There's it to raise it up, to get it up high enough to where we can see those arms. So that is merged. That little star is set to merge, so it blends with the larger star. And because of the merge, we had to give it the base height so it stood up above the base. Now, on that base height, on that small star, that base height, my base is only 1/4 of an inch. I mean, I can drop this down to too many decimal points, 0.28, and I only was giving it base so that I was only giving it base because of the circle that I had there, to try to raise it up. But it doesn't need it now that the circle's gone, right? So it doesn't need that base height and everything. But it's merging with those two things. Now, the degrees, those 12-degree marks, the 30, 12-degree marks, they are on a different level. They are set to merge, so they kind of blend inside of this base. So we have that nice little, it'll just kind of chamfer, slight chamfer, a little step to that base and everything. But it's merged inside, not sitting on top of it. And they're on their own level. And that level is merging with the level underneath. If that level was adding, then they would literally be sitting on top, right? If that level was subtracting, they would be like concaved in kind of thing, right? Subtracting from what's underneath. So we need it to merge. Nice merge, right? So there's a little compass rose, right? Very simple, from 2 4-pointed stars and a little square and a circle, right? Very straightforward. Now, coming here, and it's 10 o'clock, and we're going to wrap this up with last scenario of the merge low and all that stuff. So really quickly, you're going to see kind of like where a merge low becomes useful, or not becomes useful, but could be used. All right, I'm going to turn off all the models that are currently on here, and I'm going to insert a new level. Okay, that new level is what I'm going to kind of draw on. Let's move the graphics 2. That's my compass vectors. Let's turn that off. All right. Let's pretend I was making a kind of like a corner post. When I say a corner post, let's say it's the corner of a cabinet, right? It's that kind of that corner post. It's slightly rounded, angled on the sides, that kind of thing, right? And let's say that on this corner post here, let's say that it has a shape. Let's go into node editing, cut the vector here and here. And let's give the shape a slight, I want to, let me change that, not the circle. Let's do an ellipse. All right, node editing. Cut this in half. Stay with me. This is going to be interesting. We're going to make a copy of this. Hold down that control and the shift key to keep it centered and make a smaller one. A smaller one. About like that. All right, here on this rectangle, let's get it centered on the board. And let's go into node editing mode. And let's get rid of the top span and the bottom span. All right. We are going to also, from our clip art, from our models and everything, we're going to go into our decorative folder. And we are going to grab let me see which would look good with what I'm about to show you. We will grab this flourish. We'll use that in just a minute. All right, now I want the same lines here. I want these same, lines here. I want to hold down the control key and the shift key, and I want to make a copy of these, but smaller, right about there in the middle here. Okay, so there are lines there, you just can't see them. Okay, now on the level that's active is level 3. That's where we're creating these flourishes and all this, because this is the new level. All right, so when it comes to the other levels, whatever level was active when I was creating components, that's what the components went into. So the only on these here, all these components, they were it was active when I was copying these in here, but when I was drawing the last little bit of that flourish and everything, or that compass, I had level 2 active, so that when I created that last part, that circle and everything like that, it dropped into that level. So whatever level is active, when you create new components and everything, they're going to drop into the active level. But it does not matter what level is active when they're just sitting idle and on your, it doesn't matter what level is active. But when you're actually working in it, everything you do is going to happen. It's going to change or switch to the active level. So if I'm changing or working on a part that's in level 1, but I made level 3 active, when I save those changes and stuff to it, or if I add a draft to that part, it's going to throw it up into the active level and take it out of the level that it was in. So it's very important to make sure that your level that you're working in is active. And on this particular example of a merge low and why we would use it or how we would use it and all that, on this particular example, Level 3 is going to be active, the active level, so that anything I create goes into level 3. Cool beans. All right. So here's the dealio, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go over here and let's turn on our vector so we can see. We are going to select this long rail here and this long rail here, and we're going to do a 2-rail sweep. That's going to be our active rails, and then we're going to use this large shape here, and we're going to apply that between those rails. Okay, so we just made this shape right here. With me? With me. Cool beans. All right. Now we are going to create a new component. We're going to select the short rails. Those are going to be our drive rails, and we're going to use this smaller part here. And we're going to merge that in, just merge for right now. Well, let's add it in. Let's add it in right now. And we're going to create that shape. And what I just did is I just draped this small shape over the big one. Literally, it just draped right over. If I were to subtract that shape, it just takes it away. Down to 0, you know, there's nothing there, right? If I merge that shape, well, that shape is now inside there. It's in there. It's in there. It's just hiding, right? Because it's lower, right? It's lower. If I turn off the bigger one, there's the smaller one, right? So if I have 2 parts like this, and I set one of those parts, in this case it'll be the small part I set, if I set it to merge low, it is going to, of both the components that are, you know, together and all, it's going to keep the lowest of the 2. The lowest parts, the lowest areas of the 2. Not just because it's not going to keep just the one because it's lower than the other. If there were any other parts that were lower throughout this, it's going to keep the low parts, right? So first, before I set that to low, I want to throw this flourish on top here. And I want to size it down to fit kind of like in between my lines. Right? So I want to select this part, hold down and select this part, and align them left to right with one another, like that. Okay? And so basically the part, look at there, it looked like I broke my part right there, didn't it? The component, the flourish, it's no longer the foundation, right? It needs to be up here, right? It needs to sit up here. And it's kind of just draping over that part, right? Just kind of draping over that part and everything. Well, I want to bring it in. I want to make it narrower. So let's make it narrower like that. And I want it to kind of sit like on that ridge right there. Right? Now, I want, let's turn off the big component. I want to see it on the small component. And I actually want it to kind of, I want to stretch it. I kind of want it to kind of take up very close to the edge of the big component or the small component. Alexa, stop. I want to have it kind of like this. Now, remember, I said like I'm kind of making like a corner post, if you will, right? And so when we look at this, you know, I have this, let's get it kind of up and down straight here, and I'm going to tilt it just to the side so you can see the effect that's about to happen. I want to turn off the vectors at this point. so you can kind of see that shape and everything. Well, I would like this shape. I'd like a little bit of a detail to where it's kind of inset a little bit. So I'd like a little bit of an inset on this. So if I merge this small component, if I set it to merge low, then the big component, I set that to merge low. Are you gonna disagree with me there, boys and girls? They are both the same height. Even though one's smaller than the other, it's the same height. It stretched it to the same height. So bear with me a second. Let me go into the properties and actually make it shorter. Let me see what the other one is. The other one's probably going to be the same. Yeah, they're both the same height. So there is no low. They're both the same height. That's why nothing happened. All right, let's make the small one a little shorter. We need a low. One of them's got to be low, right? In order for that to work. So let's go back in here. I need my small one to be lower. So instead of 1.48, let's go 1.375. Give it a second. Let's go here. 1.375. Now let's go a little bit more. 1 1/4. All right. Okay. Now, hold on a second. It's merging low, right? So it's keeping this and everything. But, hold on now. I don't want to lose the sides here. I want my corner post to still have the sides. I only want kind of like, the middle where this flourish is to be low. So my part, they're both the same size. They're both created on the same rails, right? Just one rail was shorter, so they're both the same size. So what I need to do is I need to kind of narrow it in a little bit. So on my big part, let's go in here and let's make sure it's selected, and let's bring it in just a little bit. Bring it in just a little bit. So bring it in. Can you see the effect that's happening here? All right. Okay. So now I have this low area with this flourish in the middle. I have that there. And I'm at 1.25. I want to go a little bit higher. Let's bring it back up from, let's go 1.3. There we go. Looks good. All right. So my little part, right? Let's understand this. Let's break this down, okay? Turn off the big one. Turn off the flourish for a minute. My part here, this one, it's narrower and shorter, right, than my other part. So it is going to, it's the lowest part, right? The peak and everything, it's the lowest part. And my big part, right, full-size big part here, where those two combine with one another now, since I have it set to merge low, it's going to keep just the lowest area, right? Now, it stops, if we look at this deep V right here, where that part kind of comes in, it stops. And, one's no longer lower than the other, and also it kind of stops. And so that kind of creates a little bit of a deep valley right here, right? Creates like a little deep valley. So what can I do to shallow up that valley a little bit? I can take the small part and stretch it out and reduce it down, right? So on the small part, I can come in here and I can stretch it out. The more I stretch it out, it no longer becomes the low point. You can kind of see things shift there and everything. And let's bring it out. You can see, you know, once I'm out here now, you know, it's no longer the low point, right? Well, I'm going to come pretty close, not full, just pretty close in here. But I need to lower the height down because I want the height lowered, right? So I come in here and I lower the overall height. So not 1 inch, that's too low. Let's go 1.375. And so let's go 1.3. So now, you know, it's only keeping the low part, but when it's no longer lower and everything, they stay together, right? It maintains and everything. So it's at some point in time there, they kind of begin to blend together. So now I create that little inset. And if I want this inset on the side higher, then I have to make this part narrow. I got to kind of, you know, bring it in to kind of increase that wall height here because it's taken this down to the lowest point, right? And so when I bring the flourish in here and the flourish is sitting on top, you know, I have this, but if my walls are a little low on the side, and that's okay, nothing wrong, that still looks good, but I'd like them to be a little bit higher. When I say the walls, I'm talking about the wall of the big one. I'd like it to be a little bit higher. So what I have to do is I have to reduce the size of my part. I got to kind of bring it in, right? So bring it in. When I'm out here, right, in, and if I'm there, right, but I need to bring it in more. Now, the more I bring it in, you see those walls start to build up with one another. I like the walls right about there. And so we create that nice little embellishment in this. Let's say it was a corner post and I had this, you know, going all the way up and down and all that stuff, you know, on the corner and everything where the corners are coming in. It comes into this nice round over bull nose type trim, if you will. And then, you know, in that post, I have this nice, you know, kind of slightly recessed embellishment and all that. Now, these sharp edges and all of that stuff right there, all those sharp edges, I could go in on the big part. I could go in. If I say show only this, right, it fills it right back in, right? Fills it right back in. So I can't show only that. I got to kind of show it all. And if I wanted to add a little bit of a draft to kind of fill in some of this area right here, then as a whole, I got to create a new component of the visible composite model. So what I need to do is, of the visible composite model, these 3 parts right here, I need to create a component based off of that. Turn off the originals. So now this is a standalone component. This is a copy, right? This is a standalone. So now I can add a draft to it. Not a 45 degree. I'm just going to go 22 and a half. I like my 22 and a half. All right. And what I'm looking at is I'm watching these edges right here, right? 22.5 degree. All right, we should be back now. Kind of blinks out a little bit when I am creating that composite model. Now, when I created the draft, it created the draft on the whole thing, right? Everything that was visible. You see that side part kind of wrapping around? I don't want that effect. While it's a nice effect, it's not too bad, but I don't want that. Don't want that. And I'll answer your question in just a second, Brooks. So I'm going to step that one back. Okay, I want this to stop here. And I want to step back to create a component, because what I want to do is I want to turn on my original part right here, right? I want to turn off the flourish and only create a component of this. I want to make a component just of this. So without the flourish on it. Create a component from the visible model. All right, I can turn off the originals now. So now this is one component. I want to add it while it's visible and all that. I want to add a draft to it. And this time, again, we're going to probably blank out while it drafts. Hang with me while it's drafting. I'm going to go with a 30-degree angle on it this time. I'm actually going to go 30. Again, bear with me while it's drafting. All right. We should be back now. On the draft and everything, I'd need to kind of clean this up a little bit, but on the edges, that little there, that would be probably a little bit of sculpting and smoothing on that. But let's put the flourish back in. There we go. And that would be my corner post. Let's go ahead and let's take off everything here. Hold on a second. Let's go to create a boundary around the model. Let's draw a line there. There. Let's use our trim scissors to trim this, that, and that. Oh, not that one. This. All the way up to here. Trim, trim, trim. All right, I'm going to take this. I'm going to select this component right here, and let's actually do it in the component tree. I want to select this component right here with that, and I want to clear everything outside of the vector. I want to get rid of those edges and all that jazz. And there is my finished part. Those recesses occur, you know, from the draft. I may be able to, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but if I needed to, I should be able to go into sculpting, and I should be able to smooth that away. Smooth that away, add a little bit of smoothness there. Come down here, smooth that away. That. Come over here, make my little thing a little bit bigger. All right, let's go larger and hit the whole thing. I'm going to turn the smoothness down just a little bit. Let's go even bigger with this. Hit the whole thing right in here. All right, click OK. And that would be my finished part. Okie dokie, dokie dokie. All right, so that would be a merge low scenario. A merge low scenario. Okay. Kurt H. Laney, yes. Yes, Kurt H. Laney, can you do a circular array using numbers instead of the bars for the clock? Yeah, okay. Great question. Let me answer Kurt's question on that real quick. And then Kurt, you called my name. If you have any other, let me know if you need me again. All right, really quickly. To answer Kurt's question, I'm going to draw just a line. And I'm going to draw a line 1 inch long right there. And here. Let me take really quickly, this and move all this over to the right just a little bit. All right, on this line, I'm going to do a circular array at 0, 0, 12 times, 360 degrees around, right, to represent the hands of a clock kind of thing. Now, I'm going to come into my text tool, and I'm going to, let's go with a simple small font. Let's click right here. Let's go 3/4 inches tall. And I'm going to literally, I'll just do 6. You'll get the idea after 6. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We would continue. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. I would come in here and right click. I would take that text and break it into individual lines. So they're all individual. Now, these lines that I drew have a center point. When I double click on them, there's a center point. So it gives me a snapping point, Kurt. So now I can take, and this would be number 12, right? This is number 1, but let's pretend that I've rotated this. You'll see that in just a minute, right? So we'll end up with 12. But we're going to come here and we're going to snap this right there to that line. Okay. Now, I'm going to select all the lines and that number 1, and I'm going to rotate them. I'm going to rotate them an angle of 30 degrees. We talked about that one earlier with Edwin, right? 12 hands of the clock, 360 rounds is 30 degrees. And I'm going to rotate that by 1 tick. And then I'm going to take this 2 and I'm going to snap it there. I'm going to select those and rotate them. I'm going to take this 3 and snap it here. Select all of that and rotate it. Take this number 4, snap it right there. Rotate 5, snap that there. Rotate and 6. And we would continue with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this around. Tick, 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 tick to the 1 o'clock mark, right? Okay. Now, let's take a look at something really quickly. Very important stuff to know when you're really quickly. Let's go over here and let's look at clock face vectors. And let's take a look at images and everything. And let's look at clock faces for a second. So some clock faces, the numbers are upright all the way around, right? Upright. Roman numeral numbers, the numbers follow the angle of that, you know, all the way around, kind of like what my numbers are doing right now. My numbers are doing this. Bear with me a second. My numbers are currently doing what these Roman numerals were doing. Some clock faces, like I said, the numbers are straight up. And then on some very rare and weird clock faces, bear with me just a second here. Let me see if I can find one of those very rare and weird clock faces. Give me just a moment. Give me just a moment. Of course, they're not going to show me one. Well, sometimes on some clock face vectors and all, they have the numbers following around like the Roman numerals do, where they kind of, where they tilt and everything with that, and it doesn't look that good. It looks good when the numbers are facing up. So what do? Well, again, we have our center point, right? We have our center point here, and these, all we do is we select this. We can close that. We select this and we allow it to rotate on itself, and it's at a 30-degree angle. So I can go 30 degrees and step that up. Step that up twice. This one would be 3 times. This one would be 1, 2, 3, 4. This one would be 5, just like the number. This one would be 6. Kind of deal, right? And then you get rid of the lines. Okay? Kurt, so we use the lines because they give us a center point to snap to, right? We can take our numbers and snap them right to the line. Rotate everything around, so we can get snapped to each line. It's easier to snap. Instead of just dragging and snapping this way, it's easier to kind of do the rotation and snap it right to that top line, top line, top line, top line. And then when we get everything back into the right order, then we can take each of those individual numbers and rotate them around. If it was Roman numerals, we wouldn't do anything with them. They would stay in that orientation and all that stuff. But at this point, then you get rid of, your little lines, put them on another layer, turn them off in case you need them again or something like that. But that's how you would lay out the hands of the numbers in your clock. Okay, Nick? Okay, doke. Cool beans. All right, now Brooks Martin asked a question and said, on this, excuse me, on this, what if we made a smaller part dish, use it and use the multiply thing instead of the merge low, right? The merge low kind of thing, right? And yeah, Brooks is on the right track. All right, cool, man. You're very welcome, Kurt. Your Brooks Martin, you're absolutely on the right track. You could absolutely do that, right? So let's draw out a little, just so you can understand what Kurt's getting. Let's draw out a little bit, something a little bit different. I am going to, let's do right here. Oh, okay, yeah, hold on a second. I'm going to do right here. Let's create another rectangle right here. Go into node editing. Turn this into a Bezier curve. Pull this down to here. Pull this out. Pull this in. So about like that. Let's go here. Delete this span and that span. Bear with me a second. Delete that span and that span. All right, I want to go into the 2-rail sweep. Take this shape, click apply. What we should have here is this kind of ramp, if you will. Right. Okay. Bear with me. There's a method to this madness and all that wonderful jazz. I'd like to turn this bad boy around. So let me swap the rail order and hit apply. There we go. All right. Cool beans. All right. Now for this bit of a demonstration, I'm going to create another 2-rail sweep. Let me set up my level first, so we're on a different level because I want to use the multiply. So new level, and let's put this component that I just made in that new level. We'll keep this one as it is, but level 4 is what we're going to work on this one. I want to I meant to leave my rails on the side. So let me draw my lines back really quickly. Okay, now I'm going to draw one more shape. And actually these lines, I'm going to move them in just a little bit. I'll center them in just a second. Line them up, right? Okay. One more shape really quickly. Let me get down here. And on this shape, I'm going to go node editing, delete this span. I'm going to delete this span and this span. I'm going to insert give me a second. There's a method to this. All right, I'm going to take my fillet tool. Let's put a 1/2 inch fillet right there, just that shape that you see right there. Okay, and shoot, hold on a second. I'm anal real quick. Bear with me a second. I'm going to cut this vector right here. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to flip this bad boy to the right, mirror to the right, just because I want it to be the same. And then I'm going to I got to join those two pieces back together as one. And I want to put my fillet back on there now. Okay, there we go. So this shape. Now I'm going to take this shape. Now this shape is going to end up being my multiplier. Okay, in just a second here. Now this shape, I'm actually going to kind of bring it in just like that, right? And I want to sweep this shape between those two rails right here. So in my 2-rail sweep, I'm going to make that my drive rails. I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to apply that. And what you're going to see is we have this shape right here. Okay? Right there. That shape. Now, could be a cool piece of trim, but nope. Wait, there's more. We're not done. That's just the shape that we're using that our other shape's going to end up being in just a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, and notice now I'm not going to use a zero plane with this one. I'm just going to take this shape, and gosh, I hope this works so I don't look like a dumbass. But anyhow, we're going to duplicate it. And we're going to reverse it. And we're going to change the combine mode to multiply. I really think I should add my zero plane. I'm trying to do it without. Let me just see. Let me just bear with me because I know I'm going to be an idiot here in just a second. But I don't think just give me a second. I want to make this number one. Number one. Number one. Number one. All right, what we should see is a flat image, nothing. It's a multiplier, right? So it's disappeared. It's nothing, right? We should see my two shapes here. Okay? Now, there's one more shape that I want to add to this. So I want to go to my layers. Now, this is where it all is about to make sense, okay? I want to use, let's use the Encarthus here. Let's bring that into the mix. I am going to rotate this around 90 degrees. I'm going to size it down and put it right here. I want to center it. So hold on. If I select this line, I should be able to center that left to right. There we go. And I want to bring it in a little bit. And I need to create a vector around it. Okay, so now I have a vector of that. All right. Now, if all is right with the world, and this is what my shape looks like right now, okay? This is what my shape looks like and everything. And it's bleeding over into this part right here, and that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. If I wanted to, I could size it in just a little bit more. Hold on a second. I could size it in just a little bit more. And that's fine. Okay. Now, here's where the magic should happen. Let me turn this in a way where we can see it, see the full effect and everything. So one, I have this curve shape, right? So let me select the shapes as I'm describing them. I have this curve shape. This is the base, okay, the foundation. So everything is taking on that shape, that curve, okay? Now, what should happen, what we should see in just a moment, if everything is right with the world, when I multiply this, this should have kind of a decorative, this Ancarthus should still take on this curve shape. It should start to fade out on the edges of this shape that is green right now, this shape right here. It should take on that shape, but it should level down in a sense of low. Let's find out. Let's find out. If I take Ancarthus and this shape right here, I might even be able to do just the Ancarthus. Let me put the Ancarthus below the multiply. There we go. So you see the multiply, how it faded to that shape. Let me put it back above. Okay, you see how it's here? Remember this shape is got the multiplier. I got the opposite of that. So it becomes my 1 in the middle, 0 on the edge of this shape. Just like that, you know, that dome and dish. 1 in the middle, 0 on this edge. So when I put the Ancarthus here, it fades to 0, right? So it fades to 0. It fades that shape. It comes down. Let's put it above while we're looking at this angle. See that? Let me zoom in even more. Okay, below the multiplier, it now takes on that shape. Okay, now if I bring the main base, which one is it that I need to bring? Let me see. I need to bring one of these others down too. Let me see. Bear with me. Yep. It looks weird right now. Don't worry. It looks weird, but that's exactly the what I wanted. Let me get it turned the right way. Hold on. I got to get it turned the right way so it makes sense to you. Okay. So now that Ancarthus is taking on this shape, and both of them are in that multiplier and everything. And my main shape, which created the curve, you know, it's still still being, you know, it's still allowing the curve to be created with that, you know, in the middle there, right in the middle, because 1 is 1, 0, 0. Now remember the vectors I created, right? The vectors. If I select this component and this component, which one is it? It's this one and this one. No, it's this one. I'm sorry, but this one and this one. If I select that component and I remove everything, clear the selected components outside of that vector away. Oh, it's going to make me bake them first. I don't want to bake them. I want to keep my originals intact in case I want to make a change. So hold on a second. I need to create a composite model from the visible model. Let me just turn off this other one. I need to create a composite model. And the multiply still stays in. I can turn off all my originals, you know, because I made that new model based on that. Now I can trim, select this vector here, clear everything outside of that vector away. And what I should have is this shape here. It looks real funky and odd. Bear with me, but there's a reason why it looks funky and odd. Give me a second. But I need to clean this edge up right here. Smoothing would probably do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this shape, the vector. I'm going to bring it in just a little bit. So offset inward. Man, just a small amount. Let's go 20 thousandths of an inch. That's not too bad. All right, let's go back in there once again. Select the model, select that vector, clear everything outside of there, and I should have, that should be gone, nice and clean. Now, the shape is tall, right? The shape is tall and all that stuff and everything. Let's get the height down to the right size because it's still got that big old peak in the middle. Let's go to our component. Let's go to the properties of it and change the height. It's 2 inches tall, right? So let's bring that down to 1.25. Nope, 1.48, 1.5. I'm going to go 1.5. Okay. Now, give me just a second. Hang tight for 2 seconds. I want to make something a little bit longer, a little bit taller. Let's go 20. All right, let's take this model. Bear with me. Turn this off for just a second, and I got to add my draft. Now, the whole purpose of this is, Brooks was asking if I could do this, with that inside that leg and all. Yes, but what I did is I took this flat Ancarthus. I took and created a shape that had a curve to it, right? It had that kind of like bell curve, let's call it, that bell curve. And then I had this other shape that I created that has kind of a center curve going the other way. It creates that hump down the middle, that vein, that backbone, if you will. And I took this flat Ancarthus and I flowed it over there. Well, that backbone, that curve in the middle and everything, that became my multiplier. So I duplicated it, made a negative of it, set it to 1 inch, and that became my multiplier. So that way the Ancarthus fades out when it gets to the edge of that center shape and everything. All the while, both of those two items are taking on the shape of that first bell curve that I created. So that's what gives me this shape here where it's coming, this way, right? This curve. And then from the front, the Ancarthus is taking on that second shape, which is this shape here. Now, I'm going to add a draft to it to clean up all the edges and everything. I'll go with a 30-degree. draft on this. We're going to out. Hang tight. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to blank out one more time. We might possibly blank out one more time. I just want to was a little bit too much. Okay. And the, again, that side shape, that being the multiplier, the Encarthus fades, from 1, full, detail down to nothing right at that edge. Because when I knew I was going to use the vector to get rid of all that stuff around it, but by using that as the multiplier, it faded it to nothing and, really cleaned it up. It kind of finished it off, if you will. And when I made the new composite model of that, because it wanted me to bake it together, I don't like baking models together. I'd rather create a copy of it. That way my originals are still intact and I can make changes if I need to. But by doing that, that composite model maintained the shape, the negative, the multiply, whatever. All it was, that new model has all the shape. So now I have this compound shape where it's curved front to back like that, but it's also curved side to side, this ramp down. Now I want to come in here on this composite model that I just created, and I'm going to go ahead and drop it down onto this level, and I'm going to turn this level back on. Okay. And let's turn that level off. Bear with me. And I need to get them centered up with one another. So I'm going to select this component, select this component, and align left to right. Okie dokie. All right. Hold on. We're not done yet. All right, change my part to 1.48 because that's how tall the tallest part of this part is right here. Okay. Is it 1.48? Let me see here. 1.48. Oh, I got 1.18. 1.48. There we go. Should get me right close there. Now, hold on. We're not done yet. Okay. Now, part of my model is I just moved it. Hold on. Let me put it back there. Part of my model, let me see if I can move it straight up and down, is, in here, right? In here. Okay. Let me get it back in place there. And now on those two components, I'm set to merge here. If I set this component to merge low, it should blend. Let me see. No, it didn't because, hold on a minute. Yeah, it's not going to merge low because that one is tilted forward. So hold on a second. Let me see if I back it up some more. And all that stuff is lower. If this was straighter, let me see here. All right, let me hit save real quick. I'm going to move this back a little bit further in. Oops. Get here. I'm going to drag it. All right, let me see if I can center this up. Let me see if this will work, if I can get this to merge low proper. Sometimes not. Left to right. Set this to merge low. Nah, because the lowest part of the model is back here and everything. So that's all right. That's a bummer. That's all right. Let's pull it back out. What I want you to, let me pull this back out to here. Long story short, I would go in on that one. It's not going to merge low because the back of that is lower. It goes at an angle, goes back. So merge low is doing exactly what it's supposed to, but it's taking all this green away right here and everything. I don't want that. But regardless of that, I have my tools for, I could, smudge those in and everything. But long story short, let me come here and show you this here. I'm going to make this let's get everything centered on the board. Now, the whole purpose of this and making that Encarthus and everything is, what does that look like to you? Maybe crop the flourish. Yeah, I could crop, or something here. But what does that look like to you? This end right here. What does that remind you of in a way? Anybody? While you're thinking about it, I'm gonna pull it up and show you. Let's see if I can find one. Think about it. While you're thinking about it, give me a second, then we're going to wrap this up and say our goodbyes. But let me see if I can find. Am I spelling it wrong? Flourish. Flourish, flourish. Well, dadgummit. I could have swore Ancarthus, and is it really called an Ancarthus? Ancarthus flourish. No, it's not gonna. I know there's a sample, but anyway, what I'm getting, what I was trying to get at is, let me see if I can get this to. Let me mirror this. Maybe visually it'll make sense. Mirror, create mirror copy, flip about job center, flip vertical. What? That's center? All right, hold on a second. Let me draw a center line. All right, let's see if that is actually the center. It doesn't look like it, but let's find out. Mirror, flip about line. Close enough. Not really. All right, hold on. We're getting there. All right, what I was getting at was, or what I was trying to get at, if you will, was a like a valance. I don't know the proper term. Curtain rod, if you will, like a decorative curtain rod, or like a that has these nice little flourishes at the end that that kind of taper down. It could be a piece of trim or something. That's what I was kind of alluding to, and I don't know what you would call it, but long story short is we took a component that looks like this. This is what this component looks like right out of the gate from the Vectric Gallery, right? This flat component. We gave this component a curve where it curves and has that hump in the middle. So it's kind of a sweep in, over, and all, and we have that curve. Then we also gave that component a curve where it flows in like this. And all by using the way we combined. The way we combined those parts, we drew our first curve, we created our second curve, and that second curve became kind of like the multiplier. That's the one that we duplicated and we made a reverse of it. And because our Ancarthus, that flourish, we wanted to stop it. We wanted to bring it to zero, to nothing at the edges, right? These edges right here, bring it to nothing. And so that became our 0 point. So whatever object becomes your 0 or 1, your multiplier, should I say, your 1, that is, what it blends to. Balance, thank you, right? A Roman scepter, there you go. A sea creature, right? Look like a sea creature, there you go. Something, right? And so when we created that multiplier, it created that part and it stopped that flourish from going beyond that center curve. And, so now I have this nice front curve. I have this middle curve. I gave it body and shape. We trim all the waste away, so it, we're left with just that part. And we have created, kind of this unique looking piece using a combination of merge low, so it created that drop down, and then multiply to turn, this flat object into this kind of compound curved flourish, if you will. Right? And it could definitely be a drawer pull of some sort. Absolutely. This, I can't really get it. It doesn't show undercuts, but, this could all be empty down here, and it could be just a rod going across there, If, just so you understand that one, if I could save time in a bottle, let's see here. If I sized, I'm going to squeeze this in for a minute. When you size something, it changes X, Y, and Z. Okay. So on here, I'm going to go into this property and make it that 1.48. 1.48. Yeah. So that looks a little bit better. Let's turn this around and everything. So you kind of get the idea, right? You get the idea? I don't want to overcomplicate it and all that stuff, but add, subtract, merge low, and multiply. Now, where you see multiply used quite a bit is in domes and dishes, like we saw with the, the goose and the bird and all that stuff. But I needed you to also see that multiply one, there's two things. Number one, we did not need a zero plane for the multiplier to work. All we needed was an object duplicated and reversed, and then that reversal set to 1, and then its combined mode may turn to multiply, right? It became the multiplier. That's all we needed. And then in the component tree, before we had the, the copies and everything, that the items that were below the multiplier, which is this one with the round circle right here, the items that were below that took on that multiplication, right? So because we used in a dome and dish environment, we need the zero plane and we need the, the dome version of the dish. We need those grouped together in that group set to multiply for that particular instance. It does not mean that we have to have a zero plane every time we try to use the multiplier. It simply means that we have an object that we want to use as our object, whatever it is. It's kind of going to be our boundary in a sense. And we're going to make a duplicate of it. We're going to set that duplicate to 1 and change it to multiply. And then anything that gets near that component, anything that gets outside of it goes to nothing, 0. But in the middle of that area, it stays at 1. So that's why this shape faded down and stopped right at the edge of that compound shape. And to show you the shapes, again, if I turn this off and turn on the original shapes we had this shape here. This is our final goodbyes here, ladies and gentlemen, because it's late. But we had this shape here. That was that's what gave us our little ramp. We had this shape here, which gave us our that center, that backbone curve. It's a nice piece of trim shape right there, by the way. Anyway, when those two items were brought together, it created that, and that's a nice piece of trim too. You know, like a what do you call them? Corbel, like, you know, for a bookcase corbel. If it had a little bit of a finish on there, we could finish it off on the end. But corbel. But anyway, so that gave us our two shapes. It gave us our, you know, winding shape, this shape here, and it gave us our compound shape, this shape here. But we didn't want the encarthus dropping off the edge, right, and taking on this. So this compound shape became our multiplier, and it also, because of the multiplier, it became our boundary, right? So anything outside of this here, it stops it. So when we had the encarthus on there, right, the encarthus on here, where the encarthus, you know, went past the edges and stuff, when the multiplier, which is the opposite of that, you know, that middle compound piece, when that multiplier was thrown into the mix, watch what happens to the edges of this encarthus. Right here, these edges, they're already, you know, we're not very far over, so there's not a whole lot of change, but really kind of focus on this edge right here. Let me see if I can turn it a little bit, not much, but when that multiplier got turned on, that was a big one. Let me turn the multiplier off and let me bring this shape above. There we go. Let me turn the multiplier on. So watch the encarthus. You see how it faded there? Let's get it out of red. Hold on. Let's do that again. Let's turn this off. Let's make sure it's not red. Okay. See the edges? See the edges right here? All right. When the multiplier was turned on, right? See how they faded they went to 0 and kind of cleaned up right there. They merged real nicely on the edge of that because that shape was our 0, our multiplier basically. You know, 1 being the highest point, 0 being nothing right here on the edge of this. Corbel, hand corbel, yeah, right. And so that's it trimmed to there. And then of course this, right, this shape right here, the big ramp, that shape, which one is it? This one right here, that ramp shape, when it's brought down below the multiplier, then it gets cut off to 0 at this edge right here. So when that shape gets brought down below the multiplier, that's where that shape, the whole shape gets brought to 0. It gets cut off right at the edge here. But it, you know, this whole shape is getting sucked down to this edge and everything. And that's why we're still able to keep the ramp shape here, but we're kind of cutting ourselves off at the end of this compound shape. Even the big shape is kind of taking on, it's getting cut off here. Now, these two things, why they're still standing here, they're not inside of this multiplier. The multiplier stops here and here. Everything outside of this is untouched, right? The multiplier stops there, so it cuts it off. That's why we use the trim tool to trim to the vectors to remove this excess waste. And we trim to the vector to remove the excess waste of this too. And when it was all said and done, you know, when those vectors were in and we had this, you know, this whole shape and all, we had to bake it, not bake it, but we had to create a copy of it because at that point it wanted us to bake it together. But when it was all said and done and all the excess waste was removed, that's what created this final shape here, right? And all this excess meat right here, by the way, I could have taken some of that off. I could have removed some of that. There's a tool for that and everything. But that we put a draft on it at least, and that's what made this part here with the draft, you know, the angle. And it was one step at a time, and then we just kind of, all we did was, you know, add it to the other stuff here, right? You know, that kind of thing. One of those. One of those is not my finished part. One of those. It's not that one. It's not that one. Bear with me. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. I got to find my actual. It's not that one. Is it this one? That's the flourish. There we go. I'm missing a component. Give me a second. I'm missing a component. Did I delete it? What did I delete it? Hold on a minute. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. Where is that bad boy at? It is, oh, there it is. What the heck? All right. I don't know where it went to, and now it's back. It's crazy. Anyway. Okay, we're back. I don't know what in the world was happening. Something had changed with it. But anyhow, that's my part. That's my finished part. But anyhow, long story short, ladies and gentlemen, it's 11:30. We got to go. We've been at this for 3 hours, long enough. Need two components, then group them, then multiply, right? No. Well, only one. Okay, we don't need the two. So the two components that we combined together, we grouped. That's when we had the zero plane and the dome. So those two items had to be grouped together because of the nature of the dish and dome situation. So that's why we had to create the group. But on this multiplier here, on this multiplier, it's just the single item. Okay. Now I'm going to change, just so you understand, I'm going to change this item from multiply to add, just so you can see what the shape was. Okay. And what it was that shape, right? But we had turned it, we had made the duplicate, right? That's the duplicate. And we combined it to multiply, and it disappears. It's there. It's hidden. It's there, but it's now the multiplier. So, but it's just that one item. It didn't require a group, didn't require anything. The only time a group is required is when you have the dome and a zero plane, because it's two separate items that have to be part of that group. Then you group them together. But any shape, any model component can become a multiplier. You just have to duplicate it. And, you know, and when it's the multiplier, now this is very important, okay? When it's the multiplier, it needs to have a height or a value of 1, okay? 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 0 is 0, that kind of thing, right? It has to have a value of 1. So at its highest point in the center, it will be whatever, you know, shape that's combining with it. It's going to be at its number. And on its edges, on that shape's edges, that's 0, right? And that's where things are going to start fading to the edges of your multiplier. So, but it's got to have the value of 1. That's the whole magic of it. That's why they call it multiply, right? The factor of 1, 1 and 0. 1 times anything is anything. So if I have a part that's 5/8 and I multiply it by 1, it's 5/8. I multiply it by 0, it's 0. All right. Too much math for the night for 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 15 minutes. But thank you for sticking with me, everybody. And I really hope something, regardless of if it was this part or if it was the compass or anything, you know, whether it be a simple basic part or things, the way things combine, add, subtract, merge low, multiply, all that stuff. You know, hopefully some of that stuff stuck with you. And right. All right. All right, everyone. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for hanging out with me this late in the evening. I appreciate y'all. We'll see you next week. And hey, if you liked what you saw, give me a thumbs up before you say goodbye on the video, or, you know, come back and hit the video and give it a thumbs up, you know, and I'd appreciate it. All right, everyone. We'll catch you on another one. See ya.